I know none of you kids out there have ever fought in a war, of course. Most of you have probably never even been in a physical fight, except for perhaps with a sibling. But I bet a lot of you have played games like chess or checkers or some other battle-like game. So when you play a game like that, like chess, is there a single process of moves you can go through and every time guarantee that you're going to defeat your opponent if you just follow that process? If I could see you right now, I'm sure you'd be shaking your heads because we all know that there isn't. There's no set of moves that you can memorize and then win with every time. Step one, two, three, four, five, I win. You know it's not realistic. I mean, maybe you can defeat weeds in your yard that way. Step one, find the weeds. Step two, pull the weeds. Step three, follow it up with spraying Roundup or something like that. But that doesn't work when fighting things that fight back. If you want to get, so if you want to get better at chess, is there a way to do it, or are we just stuck like that? There's no four-step process, so I guess I can't get any better. No. If you want to improve, you use strategies. In chess or other games like that, you can get better by learning particular strategies. Now, strategies are plans that you have that help you learn the best way to compete against an opponent, but they're not plans that can guarantee the defeat of your opponent. Strategies are good, but your opponent will have a competing strategy, or they might mess up your strategy with a move that they make that you don't expect, or something like that. So strategies have to be able to evolve and change, or maybe you even have to switch to a new strategy. Strategies for games, fights, battles, they're good, but they don't guarantee success every time. So we've been talking about fighting sin in Exodus 17 and 8 and following. In our story, Joshua probably had a strategy for fighting against the Amalekites, and it was probably a good strategy. Yet it couldn't guarantee success either. Moses had to be praying with his hands raised for one thing, as we talked about last week. No matter how good our strategies are, God is ultimately the one who gives us the victory and wins the battle. So, yet at the same time, we do still have to fight. So, is sin like fighting weeds, where we can do the same thing and just spray them with Roundup or some kind of pesticide for sin that will just get rid of it? No. Sin is like fighting a battle in a war, where you have to have good strategies, but your strategies can't guarantee success or won't always work out exactly the same way. So part of the strategy for fighting sin is being spiritually healthy. That's what we talked about last Friday. If you're in a war or in a fight, if you're in bad physical shape, well, you're not going to last very long. So in our fights against sin, we have to be in spiritually good shape, spiritually healthy. Yet there are also strategies that we can use to fight against sin. One of those strategies Paul gives us in Colossians chapter 3, verses 5 to 11. I'm not going to read it to you right now. You can go read it after this is over. And you might even remember me talking about it because I just preached about it from it recently. But I want to go over it again here because it's a very helpful strategy. First, in it, we need to admit that sin for what it really is. Sometimes we try to use nice, flowery, inoffensive, kind of downplaying language about our sin, but we can't do that. We do that and we make it not sound so bad, but the thing is, if we make it not sound so bad, we're not actually taking it seriously, and we're going to lose the fight. You can't downplay your sin. You got to call it for what it really is. Don't say that your eyes wander. Call it lust and adultery. Don't say that you just like to have your cell phone around. Call it being addicted to the idol of your technology or the idol of FOMO or something like that. Don't say that you just like to share information with, when you hear things about people. Call it gossip. Call it slander. Call it for what it really is. Admit sin for what it really is. Second, we need to look at sin the way God sees it. You see, when we look at sin from our perspective, we end up comparing ourselves to people around us, and we don't really look that bad. We can say things like, yeah, I do this, but at least I'm not like so-and-so. Yeah, I use my cell phone a lot, but at least I'm not like the kids at school who can't ever put it down. Yet, when we look at sin from God's perspective, we begin to see how awful it really is. And you know how awful it really is when you see the punishment it took for God to be able to forgive it. Any sin we commit, any individual sin we commit, could not be forgiven without Jesus dying on the cross for it. A white lie, so to speak, takes the life of Jesus to pay for it. Using God's name in vain takes the life of Jesus to pay for it. Making an idol of your cell phone takes the life of Jesus to pay for it. That's how bad sin is in God's eyes. We need to look at it that way and say, this isn't a small thing. Jesus had to die for it. Third, remember that every time you sin, you're actually being very inauthentic. All of us want authenticity, to be authentic these days. And what is authentic for a Christian is to be holy. That's who you are. God, Jesus, remade us into new creations when we died and were raised with him. New people live new lives if they are living authentically. So sin, no matter how strong you feel the temptation, no matter how long you've been doing it, no sin is who you are or just part of who you are. It's not. You are holy in Christ. That's who you are. So when you sin, you're actually living a false, inauthentic life. Finally, we have to kill the sin. We can't live with the sin. We can't live beside the sin. We can't make peace with the sin. We have to kill it. We can't think we can control it. We have to kill it. You won't ever be able to control sin. You have to take steps to kill it. Now, that's easier said than done. This video is almost gone too long, so we're not going to talk about that today. We'll talk about that tomorrow. But in the meantime, remember, we have to memorize this strategy. And remember, fighting sin is like a battle. It's like a war. Or at the very best, it's like a chess match. It's not like fighting weeds or something like that. We have to keep healthy spiritually, and we have to use good strategies. So you guys think about that, and I'll see you again tomorrow.